Have you ever gotten the feeling like you're living life in grayscale? Like everything just seems to be mediocre? Or perhaps you feel like you need to hustle for happiness. You need to chase that next promotion at work. You need to date. You need to get that new car. But you cannot just be happy as you are, as though stopping the grind will make things even worse, or you just simply are not able to relax, as though everything is just a constant stream of doing and doing and doing. Or maybe you're just collapsed entirely. Maybe you're just giving up, struggling, and everything just feels too difficult. I can really empathize with that, because it's been my experience for most of my life. I was wondering why. Why do I feel this way? Surely this is not the normal way a human being should feel in the absence of, say, actual threats to life, in the absence of a lack of security. But the reality is, things seem to go much deeper than the external circumstances we inhabit. What I've discovered, so to speak, through my research is that it appears to be trauma that makes our life bleak and difficult. It is trauma that seems to give life that grayscale quality for some people. Because when we encounter a stressful situation, the body will enter either fight or flight or freeze mode. Now there's an important distinction here between these two modes, because what seems to happen is that when the body is unable to mobilize the survival energy it draws upon in order to help you weather a stressful or difficult situation, say back in the day with primitive humans facing off against predators, for example. If you were then unable to actually use the energy there that the nervous system has available, it actually becomes trapped in the system itself. It becomes stored in the nervous system. So without that discharge, this just continually happens. Trauma continues to accumulate. But what would cause the trauma not to discharge is the question, I suppose. This often happens due to the nervous system perceiving itself as being unable to escape the threat, in which case it will often go into the freeze state, which is essentially a shutdown, perceiving the world as too threatening to continue engaging with it at a full level. So, this describes lived experiences quite well. But in my experience, there is something that can actually be much more profound that seems to affect humans at a wide scale, and that is ancestral trauma. Epigenetic studies are increasingly beginning to show that we seem to inherit trauma from our ancestors, certain imprints that will activate at different periods in our lives or when encountering certain situations, essentially forcing our nervous system into a sort of survival state. Now I can attest to this personally. When I entered puberty, for example, what I noticed is that I developed social anxiety, I developed depressive episodes, life became much bleaker, the so-called grayscale effect I mentioned earlier. My creativity was drained out of me, pretty much. I only started engaging in numbing behaviors like video games and social media. The drawing and writing that I really enjoyed as a kid was suddenly no longer appealing to me. I suddenly no longer had the energy, the will, or the drive to really continue pursuing these creative hobbies. So what this sort of shown me is that there is something much deeper going on here than lived experiences, because my life has been quite comfortable. I've had a supportive home, a good childhood, lots of social connections. I was never bullied at school. and yet these trauma imprints still essentially sprung into action. So how is trauma stored in the body? This is interesting because trauma doesn't seem to be stored in actual muscles themselves, despite trauma often manifesting as chronic tension, as muscular tension, often as aches and pains in the body as well. Where trauma actually is stored, according to research, is in a region of the brain known as the amygdala. The amygdala sort of braces or contracts certain muscle groups in accordance with the trauma associated with them. A preparation for threat, I suppose. Now, the main problem here is that the body doesn't let go unless you actively process your trauma, which means many of us are actually carrying these burdens around. Our bodies, our nervous systems are carrying these burdens around that are left unresolved, that are affecting us deeply at a subconscious level and trapping us in these survival states. So what does this actually result in? Trauma's effects are quite profound and often actually stretch further than most people seem to imagine or really conceptualize. So the big ones, I suppose, the big influences of trauma can be seen in mental health issues, say for example depression and even conditions like bipolar. And in addition to what I mentioned earlier, the physical effects of trauma on the body, chronic muscular tension, aches and pains, for example conditions like fibromyalgia as well. Anxiety is a big one on top of all of this. Most people struggle with at least some form of anxiety, it seems, even if they wouldn't necessarily categorize it as such. So the burden is often so large that this dysregulates the nervous system. It forces it into a sort of survival state, which can massively hamper quality of life, vitality, these sorts of things I mentioned earlier at the start of the video. So interestingly, it actually seems that humans are the only mammalian species on the planet that don't actively process their trauma, of course with some exceptions. When in a stressful or traumatic situation, what is often noted is that animals in the wild will actually tremor or tremble, I suppose, to shake off the accumulated survival tension that they weren't able to resolve in the situation itself, say encountering a predator. If they survive it, what they will essentially do is use this tremor mechanism to return their nervous system to that state of relaxation, to that state of equilibrium that is natural to it. And this is very apparent in animals in the wild. They don't tend to develop PTSD like humans do. They don't tend to develop autoimmune conditions. It is that ability to return to this state of regulation that many humans have forgotten how to do, because we are carrying all these burdens that we have left unresolved. Now, there are many potential reasons for this. Some argue that cultural and social conditioning are big factors here, say for example telling us to repress our emotions, particularly men, telling us that we are strange for trembling and tremoring in stressful situations, that we are strange for trying to actually work through the emotions that we feel in certain situations. And so perhaps we have taught ourselves to repress these regulatory mechanisms that the nervous system comes with, that is natural to it, to restore it to that sense of harmony. So to conceptualize this, Stephen Porges came up with what is known as the polyvagal theory. You'll be seeing it on your screen right about now. So this depicts 3 different states of the nervous system: the freeze state, the fight or flight state, and the ventral vagal or social engagement state. Now, this this sort of theory has actually been criticised a lot. I certainly wouldn't take it as gospel, although in terms of providing a basic idea as to how nervous system states function, it is a good starting point, definitely. Because nervous systems are very complex mechanisms. Say, take me for example. I'm in freeze dominance, so I suffer from low energy. I did, as I said, suffer from depressive episodes as well. Chronic procrastination is a big one. On top of that, it is not safe enough to take action, is the perspective the nervous system has. It is not safe enough to mobilize energy. It is not safe enough to experience the world fully, resulting in, for example, derealization, a sort of dreamlike state even, where the world life feels like it's passing you by, where you feel stuck, where everything just feels too difficult to really carry out. Or in a fight or flight dominant system, for example, you may find yourself being hyperproductive or feeling like you really need to achieve external things in order to be happy or to feel fulfilled in life. But the actual natural state of the nervous system is feeling carefree, happy, relaxed, able to engage socially at a level where it doesn't feel performative. In a regulated state, life is supposed to feel vibrant, life is supposed to feel effortless, we're supposed to be free of anxiety. So sadly, most people actually live in a state that is quite a departure from this sort of regulated nervous system I'm describing here. The wonderful news is that we can return to this state through trauma work. I wholeheartedly believe there is not a single person who is incapable of doing this. So in my next video I will be going through how we can go about restoring our nervous system to a regulated state, and I've touched on it earlier through the tremor mechanism I mentioned that the animals exhibit in nature. This is actually something we share with many of these other mammalian species, and we actually have that very same ability to return to regulation as they do. So trauma release exercises actually allow us to relearn that tremor mechanism, and this is what I will be covering in the next video, a TRE deep dive, so to speak. So look out for that. Your happiness is entirely in your hands, and that's what I hope to have conveyed with this video. Alright, this has been Fol. Do me a favour and have a wonderful rest of your day, and remember that you are an amazing person who deserves all the good that the world throws at you. Goodbye. I hope to see you again soon.